got involved making withy pots about 3 years ago now. David Harrison in Gweek taught me initially, and then Nigel Legg in the Lizard has helped me over the last 3 or 4 years with just extra little bits and pieces, just tweaks to the pots and his big tough hands rather than my soft hands. But the initial lesson was a gift from my wife. What pays the bills is digital advertising and marketing, which is obviously quite different to making withy pots and fishing pots, but we do digital advertising, analytics, Google Tag Manager, and write applications and APIs. I make withy pots, one, because I enjoy catching lobsters, and two, it's good to keep the craft alive. It's something that's really interested me over the years. Living in the Lizard, I've seen a lot of different pots, and also it means by making the pots out of completely natural materials and as local as possible, that when we lose a pot, or if there's a problem with a pot, then over a few months or a few years the material will deteriorate, whereas with a steel pot it can be there for decades, and particularly with a plastic coating. So it's partly to not pollute the sea, and partly to keep the craft alive. I fish the withy pots mainly to catch fish for my own consumption. We don't have a license, so we can't sell the fish. So everything we catch that is of course of a legal size, and enough of them, or too few of them, as it usually is, we eat either ourselves or give to friends. When I first made my first pot on my own, not the one that I did with David, the first pot probably took me about 10 hours, something like that. Each one that I make, I get quicker, and they're all different, but I'm learning all the time, and each one is getting better. But I would say I'm probably at about maybe 4.5 hours per pot at the moment. The average lifespan of a pot can vary from just a couple of months. If we don't get the pots in time and a storm blows through, it can destroy a pot. It can just damage it, but it can totally destroy it, or it can rip all of the rope out. And when that happens, it's just look at the draw. The longest that I've had one last is 1.5 seasons. And then it's become past the point that it's easy to repair. I try to make as many as I can do. Work and other things usually get in the way, but typically 3 to 4 a year. But next year I'd like to make a lot more, and I'm trying to make other stuff that goes with the pots. I want to make my own rope. I buy rope at the moment from Yorkshire. But I'd like to make my own rope. I'd like to make my own glass buoys as well, and try and make as much as possible myself. When we're fishing the pots, pretty much every time they come up, they've received a bit of a battering, and there's some damage on them, so we have to always make repairs to them. I always carry spare withies on the boat, and we've got willow that we can use to make repairs to the pots. Usually it's part of the bottom that's rubbed away, and it's just a case of ramming in a new bit of willow, and sometimes a basket, for example, that made a few years ago has started to fray a bit, and just tie a bit more willy around it and fix it as we go. But so you always get a little bit, and today when we're out we caught a crab, and the crab ripped a withy out, so there's a repair that's got to be done. Not too much hassle, that one. The willow I use to make the pots from can vary. It's usually black mull. I tend to get it from Somerset willow growers or Musgrove willows. But it can vary, varies in the quality as well that we get. but I'm looking to buy a piece of land and grow my own willow on and coppice it myself. That's the longer term goal. So we can do everything locally, and probably use some other materials as well. A lot of people are using tamarisk in the pot bases, and they look pretty, but tamarisk is more dense and sinks better than willow as well. So looking at sourcing some of that locally, maybe north coast of Cornwall or Penzance Way would be interesting. In addition to willow and withies to make the pot, we've got a couple of other materials that are really important to us. One of those is tarred twine that used to tie the necks down, and that stops the necks dropping out and the pot falling to pieces. I'm at the moment trying 2 different types of rope. I'm using manila rope for the bridle, the bit that connects the rope to the pot itself, and then I'm trying natural flax from Outhwaite's in Hawes in North Yorkshire for the main rope. Then use natural cork as the float, and then a piece of manila rope that then joins to a natural fibre net that we keep a glass buoy in. So you've got 2 floats there. One to make it a bit more visible. These days the recommendations from IFCA is that you have a dam buoy and a flag, and there's a few other requirements. There's a lot of traffic where we shoot our pots, so we've got to make sure the pots are very visible. So I'm working on a couple of other things with stones and cork and bigger withies, and making a flag, but again all with natural materials. So it's been interesting to try different materials on the whole thing. We're learning all the time and making changes all the time. The style of pot that I make is very typical of the Lizard Peninsula. It's got quite a robust base. We put a bigger shim in the bottom, put a lot more material into the bottom of the pot because we've got very rocky coastline, and it does take a lot of wear. I've made a few modifications of the small community of withy pot makers. There is the way that the pots are made in South Devon. I've introduced some of the way that they weave their base into ours. We keep with the unbroken willow, very typical of a Breton pot and a Lizard Peninsula pot, or even West Cornwall pot. And it just gives it more strength, again, to deal with the coastline that we've got. But it's the method that I use is, if you looked at one of my pots now, it would look very similar to a pot that had been made in the Lizard 100 years ago. I get a lot of interest when I'm making lobster pots, because I get in trouble from my wife for cutting up bits of willow in the back garden. I tend to make my pots on the front of the drive, and we get a lot of people walking past and taking interest. And a few people have said, "Oh, can I watch you make them, or can I get involved in making a pot?" And some people have come out on the boat with us to fish them, and other people are just interested in what we catch. But there's a lot of interest from people. We get a lot of tourists that take interest in what we're doing as well. And we're always very happy to talk to people about what we're doing and involve the community, because it's part of the Southwest heritage in withy pot making. So it's very interesting to a lot of people. I don't make lobster pots to sell. I'd be a very poor man if I did, and I don't think people would want to pay to buy one of my pots, because it would be ridiculously expensive if I was to charge my time that I put into it. But what I do with the pots is I fish them for a while. I tend to fish them for as much of the season as I can do. And then anybody who would like a pot for the garden, when we've got the pots that have come out, I just give them away to people in the local community who have them as a feature in the garden, or use them sometimes indoors. But people like the look of them. I don't build a pot to make it look pretty. I build a pot for it to catch crab and lobster. That's the idea of making a pot. But I've had a few people ask if they can buy a pot, but I've always said no, and at the end of the season I'll give them a pot if they want it. I think we should keep the withy pot making craft alive, because it's quite a difficult thing to it's quite a difficult thing to explain to people. Even though I've watched countless videos on how to make pots, it's only talking to people who've got a lot of experience of making pots that I've learned, just silly little things that make all the difference. Whether it could be materials, or it could be just the way that you're doing a weave, and that sort of knowledge is very difficult to pass on in video or in a book. I do read a lot of books, but it's good. I'm only 45, probably one of the younger withy pot makers here, but I'd encourage anybody who's interested in it to approach any of the withy pot makers, and I'm sure they'll be delighted to share the knowledge and either build a pot together or go out fishing and use it. And I really enjoy making the pots to go fishing with, and it's a great feeling when you bring up a massive lobster in a pot that you have built yourself. I do a lot of fly fishing, and I make all my own flies, and it's lovely to catch a fish on a fly that you've tied yourself. It's the same sort of thing. So hopefully it seems to be a lot more interest. So hopefully it won't die. It won't die off, and we have made it onto Have I Got News For You? So there's a future for withy pot making. I think withy pot making as a craft could be saved by a little bit more publicity. People not being so secretive. Fishing is often quite secretive, but just maybe having more visibility of the pots themselves. I mean, very rarely as I go outside of the Lizard do I see any lobster pots anywhere. So whether there could be something that's set up online, a website that's showing different things, or community days where we take people through making pots, or going out fishing the pots and seeing how it works. I think a bit more awareness of it. It's quite an interesting thing. It's obviously very coastal, and there's different niches. But I think just showing people it is relatively easy. In my day job, I do really complicated things that make me think hard. But this is tough on your hands, but really rewarding, and it's an interesting thing to do for me anyway, and I'm sure other people would find it interesting as well. So I'd encourage anybody to go and speak to any of the withy pot makers out there and get involved.